Oakland, California, playing now in one of the most run-down stadiums of all time, the Oakland Coliseum that looks terrible, especially with it sharing a field with the NFL's Oakland Raiders. That will end next year as the Raiders will head to Las Vegas for 2020 and the A's will have the stadium all to themselves. Although it's imperative that they probably have to try to find a new stadium for themselves. With the old Coliseum being the only stadium that is both baseball and football, has been both baseball and football, it just doesn't matter. But there was once a dominant A's team that really sold out the Coliseum for a long time. That would be the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland A's actually went through two phases before they became the Oakland A's. The first phase was being the Philadelphia A's from 1901 to 1954. The A's had their ups and downs. Basically, when ownership had to sell players for money, they sucked. And then when they picked up these players, great. It seemed like players would bloom and then they would be sold because the team would go in financial ruin. Despite a decent stadium in Shibe Park, the A's didn't really do that badly. However, in the late 20s, early 30s, they were decent. They even won a World Series in 1929 against the Chicago Cubs, which was famous for one of the games, Game 4, being a shocking comeback in the eighth inning. The A's were down 8-0 to the Chicago Cubs, and then they blew out of the water with 10 runs, especially Hack Wilson's two-base error while losing it in the ninth. But the A's really were just a team that you had young stars, and then when they had money problems, they had to sell them off and all that. Lefty Grove was sold off. Jimmy Fox was sold off. Homer Baker, a lot of A's guys. Babe Ruth was in the A's farm system, but was sold off to the Boston team because of money. Connie Mack was one of the most influential managers of all time, and he managed the first 50 seasons of Major League Baseball. He left in 1951. Well, he was 86 when he finally quit. That's amazing. 86 years old. But anyway, the A's just had a lot of problems. They had a lot of last place finishes, kind of like their crosstown rivals, the Phillies. Unfortunately, money was tight, and in 1955, the Kansas City Athletics were born. Strange how Kansas City got a team. But unfortunately, the Kansas City A's were kind of controversial in a sense because it turned out to be a feeder team for the New York Yankees. Before the move to Kansas City, the New York Yankees had their AAA affiliate, if you will, be in Kansas City, the Kansas City Blues. And a lot of A's trades were with the Yankees, and they were suspect at most. The Yankees would send over the hill terrible players to Kansas City for some bright young talent. Roger Maris being the most famous example of him playing for the Kansas City A's, and then they moved him to the Yankees before the 1960 season for other people. Not surprisingly, Roger Maris would end up winning the 1960 MVP. Yeah, everyone was suspect of all the trades between the A's and the Yankees. Basically, Bob Johnson owed it to them. But there was a reason. The Yankees owners actually had the lease on Kansas City's Municipal Stadium. That's where the A's were playing. So basically, as a favor, they decided to make the Yankees and A's, like the Kansas City A's, their quote unquote farm team. But thankfully, Charlie Finley in 1961 bought the team and refused to have anything to do with the Yankees at all times. Unfortunately for the A's, they never had a winning season once in Kansas City. Charlie O, as he was known, strenuously wanted to send the team somewhere else because Kansas City wasn't really represented. Never mind that Charlie Finley actually had innovations such as a rabbit that popped out of the ground to give umpires baseballs, a blow dryer on home plate to blow it dry, a petting zoo dealing with his mule, Charlie O. Finley, and a few other innovations such as mailing season tickets and orange baseballs. He did okay, but unfortunately, innovations can go so far, and he decides to move the team from Kansas City to Oakland, basically saying that Kansas City is unappreciative. Unfortunately, Senator Cy Symington, a bit of alliteration there, literal because that's actually true. That is his name. Basically, was pissed off that Charlie Finley would do such a thing and leave Missouri without baseball. Well, they still have the Cardinals, but I mean, an American League team. They won it. After all, this is the same state that lost the St. Louis Browns to Baltimore in '54. So Finley packed up and went to Oakland, California, not known for its tech sector in the late 60s, mostly for hippies and flower children, if you will, or are they called the same, whatever. But in 1968, the Oakland A's did decent. Catfish Hunter pitched a perfect game. It was the last perfect game in the American League for 13 years. In 1969, they were chasing for the AL West crown, and Reggie Jackson was hitting home runs at a rate that could have beaten Roger Maris. Unfortunately, he cooled down and only got 49 home runs that year. It's weird about Reggie Jackson. He was drafted by the Kansas City Athletics only because the New York Mets, who had the number one pick, actually picked a catcher, Steve Chilcott. Now, I don't care what happened if you a catcher with first overall pick. That's terrible. I mean, I don't care if it's like a Johnny Bench or Gary Carter or a Mike Piazza. You don't really pick them number one. All three of those catchers weren't picked number one. It was kind of controversial because the Mets kind of had a racist background, if you will. It was reported that it wasn't Reggie Jackson's skin color that got the Mets' ire. It was basically because he had a Mexican girlfriend at that time. What was wrong with that? But of course, this is the 1960s, when blacks were frowned upon and Mexicans too, if you will, in the United States. So anyway, Reggie Jackson did well. 1971, the A's actually put on a good show in the ALCS, but unfortunately Baltimore, at the end of their dynasty, beat them. But the A's persevered. 72, 73, 74, put on a clinic. They won 3 straight AL titles and 3 straight World Series, which is amazing. However, the 72 win was kind of morbid because Reggie Jackson, in the last game of the ALCS against the Detroit Tigers, the same LCS that Bert Campaneris threw his bat at the pitcher, getting himself kicked out for the rest of the season, being the World Series, of course, dislocated his ankle at home plate. Basically, he was out for the World Series. Even though Reggie was out of touch, the Oakland A's still won in 7 games, led by Gene Tennant's 2 home run game that was shocked by, and Joe Rudy's fine play in the defense and offense. In 73, Oakland did well too. They would take on a upstart New York Mets team that only won 83 games that year and won a crowded NL East. Even the Expos had a chance at the 73 NL East title. But the Mets shocked everyone by beating the Reds in the AL NLCS and going to the World Series. That series would be most memorable for Game 2 when the Mets and A's played, and Yogi Berra making that big, angry thing into a microphone towards the umpire saying that he missed the call, he missed the tag, and all that. Also in that game, too, Mike Andrews made 2 critical errors that had the Mets win the game 10-7. Oakland wanted to get rid of Mike Andrews or basically put him on the DL, but Bowie Kuhn said that practically you can't do that just because he made a few errors. Thankfully, though, Mike Andrews did get a World Series ring with the Oakland Athletics in Game 7. But Dick Williams was so pissed off by Charlie Finley's nose getting into things, he left. I forget who the 74 manager was, but the Oakland A's actually ended up winning the World Series against the LA Dodgers. And Bill Buckner, before he made a fielding error that cost his team a World Series, made a base running gaffe that cost the Dodgers a chance to do well in the World Series. And no, Oakland didn't win in 7, they won in 5. So now Oakland had a 3-peat and going into the 1975 season. Now, this 3-peat is a lot difficult than like a Yankees 3-peat back in the 50s and all that. Mostly because Oakland had to win 2 playoff rounds in a year, whereas those Yankees just had 1. The A's took on the Boston Red Sox, and Boston was finally getting back on their feet after shooting the bed most seasons. Strange as it sounds, the 1975 Red Sox were a fine team. They had Carlton Fisk, they had Cecil Cooper, they had, I would say Jerry Remy, but I'm fucking wrong. They had Rick Burleson, they had the Wonder Twins, Fred Lynn and Jim Rice with Dwight Evans in the outfield. And Luis Dion being the best pitcher for the Bull Sox. And both Sox not only won the LCS, they swept the 3-time defending World Series champions. Can you believe it? Unfucking believable, if you will. But anyway, the 75 A's were crashed upon. Their dynasty, over. Free agency would ruin their team, especially with Catfish Hunter going to the Yankees. Oakland would not recover completely until 1981 when they had a chance to go to the World Series, but were thwarted by the Yankees. even though the A's had Billy Martin. Oakland would actually rebound into the late 80s and become a mini dynasty. A team that went to 3 straight World Series, just like their 70s brethren, but only won one. 88, it was the upset-minded Dodgers. And in 1990, it was Cincinnati, even though they looked bad and had a lot of loan namers. Cincinnati actually did pretty well. They were the best team in the NL West from day one. Now, of course, obviously, the 88 A's in the 90 team are disqualified because you have to be in a final. The 89 team, of course, won. Oakland would have Moneyball sweep the nation in 2002. Their 20-win streak was great. Unfortunately, Oakland fell to the Twins in the first round, and the Twins went on to fall to the Angels in the ALCS. The A's have gone back to decent roots in the 2010s and all that, mostly fighting for wild cards. Now, let's not forget in 2012, they actually won the division, being down by 5 games with 7 to play. That's a crazy, crazy thing. But how about this? The 75 A's deserved it. 3-time defending champs who got burned. So the A's, let's predict that they win the ALCS somehow. And it doesn't take them 3 games, it takes them 5. So the A's will now have to take on the Big Red Machine of 1975. Oakland will have home field advantage for games 1, 2, 6, 7 because the AL had advantages in the odd-numbered years. So it's going to be the Reds and the A's. Let's hope that Oakland four-peats for people's sake. Here we go. It's the Reds, it's the A's. 108 versus 98 wins. Don Gollett started game 1 of the World Series legitimately. And the A's go with Fida Blue, because why not? Well, it took a lot of guts and glory, but the Reds' Big Red Machine won 3-0. It was scoreless till the 5th inning. Both teams only having 1 hit. Cesar Geronimo avoids the double play, which scored Ken Griffey Sr. Pete Rose with an RBI double scored Geronimo. Kind of boring, but Johnny Bench hits a home run in the top of the 8th to make it 3-0. The A's had a few chances, but only 4 hits scored. Bench with a home run, Rose, Bench, and Geronimo with the job. Dan Dreisen is the DH, by the way, because obviously they went with the DH rule. Don Gollett went 8 innings. They decided to give Eastwood the chance for the save. Got it. The A's scored no runs. I award you no points. And God have mercy on your soul. Fida Blue pitched the whole game, giving up 3 runs. So Gollett, they went with Jack Billingham for game 2, Ken Holtzman for game 2 for Oakland. And in the end, Oakland actually won the game. No score till the bottom of the 1st when Ray Fawcett hits it. RBI single to score Claudel Washington. That's speedster. So Bando gets a base hit to score Billy North, but Gene Tennants gets tagged by the throw between Foster and Bench. Campaneris base hit to score Phil Garner. Yes, Phil Garner played for the 75 A's. At 3-0, it was just all but over. George Foster took a bases loaded walk, but unfortunately Tony Perez couldn't do anything about it. Reggie Jackson RBI single. Cesar Geronimo made it 4-2 with an RBI single. Joe Morgan with an RBI single. Fingers came to pitch. Even though he walked Bench, he got George Foster to the ground out. The A's put a guy on first and second, but they couldn't do it. So the A's do their job. Morgan Foster's Jr. Jack Billiam, 6 innings. Clay Carroll, 2. The A's, Jackson, Fawcett, Bando Campaneris. Holtzman with the win, Fingers with the save. Now they go to game 3. And obviously you have to go away. So game 3 would be Jim Perry. Oakland didn't know what to go for. So they go with Jim Perry against Gary Nolan. Here, Jim Perry, he was in part of the last simulation, the 69 Twins. And man, did Jim Perry have a rough go. 18-0. I can't believe that even existed. Well, Tony Perez hit a RBI single score Joe Morgan. And after Ken Griffey Sr. was hit by a pitch from Perry, Dave Concepcion comes up and whammo, grand salami, 5-0. A's have problems. Johnny Bench then comes in with a 2-run home run on the artificial turf, 7-0. Not to mention that George Foster and Tony Perez hit home runs back to back. So
3 straight home runs by the Reds. At 9-0, Johnny Bench came back with a 2-run shot down the left field line, 11-0 after 3 innings. Game's over. Joe Morgan gets an RBI double to score Nolan and Rose. 13-0. They still have 1 hit. Headed to the bottom of the 6th, Joe Morgan, 2-run home run. George Foster hits a double to score Johnny Bench. Oakland is 1 hit through 7 innings. Gary Nolan with an RBI single to score Concepcion. Pete Rose double play, but they scored a run. Finally, Oakland did come back with a few hits. Hits by Rudy, Garner, and Campaneris. Jim Perry was just roughed up. Glenn Abbott was roughed up, so was Sonny Siebert. But Dave Hamilton and Jim Todd stopped the bleeding somehow. Reds, great job by them. Every Red had a hit. Morgan for RBIs, Bench for RBIs, Foster, Perez with 2, Concepcion with 4, Gary Nolan with an RBI, and he pitched a complete game shutout. Good for him. So Oakland, knowing that they don't want to go with a 4-man rotation, Cincy decides to counter with a 3-man rotation too. And counter they did until Oakland actually shocked them when we 5. Reggie Jackson, remember him? 2-run home run in the 1st inning. There's Oakland. Bill North hit an RBI single, scored Garner. Tennis with an RBI scored Cappy, 4-0. And then Ken Griffey Sr. makes a terrible mistake. Phil Garner gets to second base, whereas Bill North and Gene Tenace score. Johnny Bench makes a pass ball. It's 7-0 Oakland. Reggie Jackson RBI single. And then all of a sudden, Cincy actually pounded up 5 runs in the bottom of the 9th. Joe Morgan RBI single. Johnny Bench with a 3-run home run. Tony Perez with an RBI single. But they couldn't get anyone past first after that 8-5 run. North with an RBI. Tennis with an RBI. Reggie with 3. Fighter with 8 innings of work. Jim Todd came in. The Reds, Bench with 3 RBIs. Don Gollett couldn't repeat his performance from game 1. Clay Carroll and Pedro Bourbon came in. So, you know the story. It's game 5. And game 5 goes to the Oakland Athletics. Surprise, they were down. They lost that game 18-0, and then they came back with 2 extra wins. They could 4-peat. Are you amazing? Gene Tenant's RBI single to score Ken Holtzman. Reggie Jackson does a 2 RBI double. And then in the 4th, Ken Holtzman got Phil Garner an RBI to score an RBI. Claudette Washington 2 RBI double. And Gene Tenant's RBI single. 7-0, and the Reds couldn't do anything. But Perez Dez scored bench to make it 7-1. But Claudette Washington 2 RBI single to score Sal Bando and Bert Campaneris. Sal Bando then came through with an RBI double, and Phil Garner RBI double. Ken Holtzman does a bad wild pitch, 11-2, no biggie. Gene Tenants hits a sac fly, and Claudette Washington scores to make it 12-2. And that was all she wrote. Cincinnati had 3 hits in that game. Claudette Washington, 4 RBIs, nice. Tenants, Jackson, Bando, Garner, Holtzman. Holtzman pitches the whole game, 126. Gary Nolan pitches 3 in the 3rd. Pedro Bourbon 2 in the 3rd. Tom Carroll and Clay Carroll. There. All right. On to game 6. It will be Jim Perry versus Jack Billingham. Can the A's shock the world by 4-peating? Evidently, they probably did, probably didn't. Anyway, bottom of the 1st inning, Bill North comes in with an RBI single score, Colorado Washington 1-0. And then Gene Tenant's RBI single to make it 2-0. A pitcher stool, Andreessen with an RBI double to make it 2-1. But the Reds, after that, couldn't do anything. They had a runner on 3rd. Johnny Bench could have done something, but he failed. And with 8 combined hits, this was a lousy game 6. But the Cincinnati Reds lose to the Oakland A's. So Oakland actually wins this simulation. Good for them. Oh, good for you. 4 hits, 2 by Concepcion, Perez, and Dreesen. Jack Billingham went the whole way and lost. 2 hits by Claudette Washington with Billy North and Gene Tennis single hits. Jim Perry, man, game 3 was terrible, but he came back in game 6 to win. Jim Todd and Willie Fingers helped out. Wow, this is just amazing. Oakland Athletics would have 4-peated it. This is just amazing. I would never have guessed they would have 4-peated it, but they did 4-peat. Good for them.